Okay, welcome back to Transcendent by Lisa Beeson, Chapter 5. This is my third time trying to record it. Here's hoping. Third time's the charm. Oh, Lord have mercy. Pardon the face, I got a wee bit sunburnt yesterday. And now I've got cream, and I'm pretty sure I've aged it about 20 years. But here we go. We left off of Chapter 4, where Kira Riley has finally accepted the love of her new family and accepted her new life as Kira Riley. She's still reminiscing about or telling her story to Adam Lennox as they're driving in his truck. So here's Chapter 5. Any more interruptions? Any more? Any more? No? Okay then. A drink of something first. How about that? I don't have coffee with me. I guess we're drinking this. Some good old spicy water. Chapter 5. After dinner, we all played a board game together. I sat on Dad's lap and moved his pieces around the board for him. I'd giggle at their silly jokes and make faces at Dad's bad ones, which made everyone laugh. That night, I didn't have any nightmares. The next day was Saturday, so Dad didn't have to go to work. He was the last one down to breakfast and walked in the kitchen with a big dramatic yawn. He waved and said, "Good morning," to everyone. Sadie, Hector, and Mom all said good morning in response. And without looking up from my breakfast, I said, "Good morning, Dad." The wall behind my words was gone, broken down by the acceptance of my new life. The kitchen went absolutely silent. Both Sadie and Hector looked at me in shock, and Mom covered her mouth with her hands. Dad only took a beat before he did a double take. I kept my head down to cover the smile that was spreading across my face. Dad opened his mouth and then burst out, "Don't you go acting like that wasn't the most spectacular thing ever." Then he scooped me up and tossed me in the air in celebration. I giggled when he caught me and he said, "Say it again." I gave him a big grin. "Good morning, Dad." He spun me around and enveloped me in a big bear hug. Sadie stood up, smiling ear to ear. "What's my name?" "Sadie," I told her in a tone that said, "Of course." She laughed and clapped her hands. "What's my name?" Hector jumped up. "Hector," I announced proudly. I'm screwing all of these sentences up. I hope you don't know. "Hector," I announced proudly. He did a spin jump and punched the air. Roosevelt barked, joining in the excitement. "Roosevelt," I said, giggling. With me still in his arms, Dad walked over to Mom. "And who is this beautiful lady?" I gave her my biggest smile before saying, "That's my mom." She let out a tearful laugh and then grabbed my face and kissed it all over. She took me from Dad's arms and gave me a big hug. I hugged her back wholeheartedly. At the end of July, it was time to sign me up for school. I was going to go to the same school as I cannot talk. Talking is a no-go this evening. Just read my mind. You got it? Good. Skipping ahead. No, just kidding. I was going to go to the same school as Sadie and Hector. I read it better when I'm not even reading it. St. Anthony's was a private Catholic school that taught kindergarten through 12th grade. The Rileys weren't Catholic, but it was an excellent school with great programs and an accommodation to special health needs. I had to take a test to see if I met the requirements to enter kindergarten and to see where I fell on the intellectual spectrum. I was able to take it on a computer in the office, and it would be graded automatically. It seemed easy enough, and when I was done, I told the office lady and went back to sit with my parents. A couple minutes later, the lady looked over at me strangely, and then went to go get the principal. He came out of his office to look at my results on the computer. His eyes widened, and then he looked over at me incredulously, and then entered into a whispered conversation with the office lady. My parents looked at me questioningly, and all I could do was shrug my shoulders. I didn't know what the deal was. The principal cleared his throat and then asked my parents to come talk with him in the office. They looked at each other uncertainly, and then I followed him. Wow, I'm struggling. We'll get through this. The parents, they looked at the principal questioningly, and then followed him. I tried to follow too, but he said for me to wait on the bench outside his office. My parents assured me, Lord have mercy. My parents assured me they would be right back as they walked in, and then the principal shut the door. There was a glass window in the wall to his office that was right over the bench I was sitting on, and even though the blinds were pulled down, it wasn't soundproof, and I could hear everything they were saying. My dad asked what was wrong and whether or not I met the requirements to attend the school. The principal laughed and said, Mr. Riley, not only did your daughter pass the test with flying colors, she set those colors on fire. She's currently reading at a 9th grade level. Her IQ is 158. That's almost at the genius level. My eyes widened at the word genius. I hadn't even been trying that hard. I just sped through wanting to get it over with. So what are you saying we should do? My mom asked. She might be better off with private tutors or homeschooling. She's a very intelligent child. I'd hate to hold her back. Hold on a second, my dad said while opening the door to the office and told me to come in. Did you hear all that, Sweet Pea? I nodded, and then he asked what I wanted to do. So I told him that I wanted to go to school with Hector and Sadie. All I wanted was to just be a normal kid. Normal kids blended in. Normal kids didn't get stared at. So after the adults talked it over, we concluded that I would enter the 1st grade and supplement accordingly at home. The night before the first day of school, Hector explained to me how not to stand out. Try to sit in the back if you can, and only raise your hand to answer questions every once in a while. If possible, try not to answer at all unless the teacher asks you a direct question. Otherwise, just sit back and let the show-offs do the work. Then Sadie interjected, Oh, and don't answer all the questions correctly either, or they'll keep trying to move you up a grade. I took their advice to heart and tried to do what they said to stay under the radar. The only time I tripped up was when we were drawing pictures of our families. I was trying to draw the colorful auras that always surrounded them, but the colors I needed weren't in my box of crayons. It was even one of those 24 packs. I looked over at the other kids' drawings to see how they were drawing them, but none of them had auras or anything like that in their pictures. I asked the girl next to me how she drew the energy around people when they didn't have the right colors. She looked at me like I was the weirdest kid ever. Then she whispered to the girl next to her, and they both laughed and called me a freak. That's when I realized that I saw things differently than everyone else. It made sense that TV and pictures didn't match what I saw in real life, because other people didn't see the world that way. So I learned not to draw things the way I saw them, but how everyone else did. I soon became a pro at not standing out. Even though I learned things quickly and easily, including musical instruments and physical education, I made sure not to do better than the second best kid in the class. I didn't talk unless it was necessary, and I usually kept to myself. My quiet confidence seemed to attract the misfits. I wasn't mean, so they took that as amiability. I could also see people for who they really were by reading their intentions, and more often than not, the popular kids weren't worth my time and effort anyway. I was able to make 2 good friends, though, and that's all I really needed. One morning we were running late, and I got dressed quickly, not realizing until it was too late that I had 2 different socks on. I was wearing long khaki pants, so it wasn't until I sat down that it was noticeable. I've got lotion in my eye. Oh my goodness. It wasn't until I sat down that it was noticeable. But of course the mean kids noticed right away and started pointing and laughing. It didn't bother me that much. I was used to kids thinking I was strange. But then a scrawny kid with thick glasses sitting diagonal from me turned around and gave me a big smile and said, "I like them." Then Miranda, the girl who had teased me the first day about coloring auras, turned to him with an ugly look on her face. "You would, Nate." He chose to take the snide remark as a compliment and gave me a thumbs up to show I got his seal of approval. I smiled back, and I knew then that I'd wear different socks from then on. It was my quiet rebellion. Those who cared didn't matter, and those who mattered didn't care. Nate and I were friends from that moment on. At recess, he introduced me to his best friend, Ainsley. They had been neighbors since birth and friends for just as long. I liked Ainsley right away. Her massive, unruly red hair, mischievous brown eyes, and smiling face full of freckles were the first things I noticed. Nate told her about my socks and how that was kind of my thing. She asked if she could see, so I showed her. One had polka dots and the other had stripes. And she gave me a big toothless jack-o'-lantern grin and said, "Cool, you want to go on the swings and play superheroes?" I said, "Sure." And from then on, we were best friends forever. I was the yin to Ainsley's yang, and Nate was the glue that kept us all together. Dad called us the 3 Musketeers, and to us, that's exactly what we were. Together we stuck up for the little guy and quietly rebelled against the tyranny of the cool kids. And that's how it was. I had a normal-for-me childhood, full of the love of family and friends. Alright, that was the end of Chapter 5. And normally, I would just continue on to Chapter 6, but since this is my 3rd time trying to film this, we're going to end it here, get it uploaded, and move on to Chapter 6. Thank you for joining us for this short chapter of Chapter 5, where she ended on talking about her friends that she made and the school she's going to, and how she's gifted, but she's being quiet about it. That was the end of Chapter 5. See you in just a moment for Chapter 6. Ending this now before it gets messed up.